Fire Rangers, an original story by Travis Jordan. Few know the fear of facing a wildfire up close and live to tell about it. I'm going to tell you why. This is the time in an honest tale that it is hard to believe and hard to tell. That is the reason I've never told it before. Not before now, but I must get it out. I fear I may just go mad. So I began my tale where it started, deep within the Okefenokee forest, much of which is an expansive swamp that hasn't been seen by human eyes since the natives that inhabited it, hence the name Okefenokee. Me and my team, the Woodlands Firefighting Force of Georgia, hadn't had the level of fires that had popped up all over the West. Not that big or numerous, but we still had the occasional house fire. And the campfires that get out of control in the national forest. But the serious fires are not that common, and when we do get them, we go out in force. We take the trench rigs, then the forestry fighting helicopters, the two super tankers. We send me and my guys, the devil dogs, the trench dogs. We fight the fires on the ground with shovels and axes and picks. In places that you can't get in with equipment and vehicles, we go in and we dig the trenches by hand. It was hard work, but hazard pay was good. But after what I saw that day, that night, deep in the swamp of Georgia, it would take a lot more than hazard pay to get me out there ever again. We get a call to head out to the swamp, and I try to cut the fire off, and many hundreds of dry islands in the swamps, we use them to cut a burn line ahead of the fire, trying to end it there and then. We load up our gear and we take our hand tools, our axes, shovels, picks, chainsaws, machetes, every hand tool you can imagine, heavy and light. Every one made specifically for our team. Off we would go to what could be the last fire for all of our lives, and would be for most of my crew. On the helicopter ride in, we got a good view of the fire and how it was spreading. It didn't burn in a normal line that the fires normally tend to burn in. It was not a long line that stretched over many miles. This was more of a oblong oval shape that had many separate sparse fires throughout the whole region. It looked as if an arsonist had been at work. So were aware when we were put on the ground that there could possibly be arsons in the area. The pilot found the clearing that was to drop us in and told us, "Good luck out there. I think you're gonna need it." And it was too true. It was more on the mark than he or we knew then. You hear that? moon's out full tonight. I'll sit this way so that the moon can light my face. This is just where my story begins. As we hacked and slashed our way into the Georgia jungle, the smell of the low-lying smoke dank with fog over the swamp fumed like a blanket, making the visibility no more than 50 feet at most. We merely hacked our way deeper blindlessly into the jungle, deeper and deeper in spite of the bogs and the pockmarks of island swamps like pimples on the face of the earth. This is where we worked. This is where we ate. This is where we slept, on these hillocks of islands among the bog. For 2 nights and 3 days, it wasn't until the 3rd day when everything went completely and utterly wrong. We were camped so deep in the bush, yet it was as if someone was coming behind us and relighting the fires. We just put them out every day, and we would wake up to the same fires in the same spot. Day 3, the smell was overwhelming. It smelled of burnt hair, roasted meat, and putrid rot, like dead animals that had been caught in the forest fire. Many times, things like armadillos and even large animals such as deer, young ones that can't move quick enough, or turtles get caught up in the flames, and we come across their rotted bodies and carcasses often. So the smell, as you can imagine, deep in that swamp, it was uncanny and undescribable. It's a smell of such putrefaction that you wish that you did not have a nose. With the smell like that, we went to sleep. Now all resting from days of work. Then all of a sudden, we came awoke to a myriad of smells and sounds, some that turned the strongest willed of us puking and slobbering. It was as if we were walking through a fort of a giant that was also a pyromaniac of putrefaction and the brazier of the dead. The first thing to come to my mind was that there was some serial killer here that lit these fires to hide the evidence of the bodies deep in the swamp. Maybe it was the smell of it, and maybe just stirring in my mind, but that something just wasn't right. The woods, after all, there was someone out there, and they had been relighting the fires as we slept at night. This was all part of an ongoing problem that we could not solve. By this point, all the crew is on edge. The last move, we continued our trench line deeper into the swamp until about 4 or 5 in the evening, when we came upon a large island, bigger and higher than any we had come across yet so far. As we had trenched our line into the heart of the inland, the island deepest in the swamp, we came to a circular clearing, and it seemed like a campground or an old hollow where the trees had been cut down many years before. All the trees in the center had been burnt or broken, and all were laying upon the ground or scattered on the edge of the clearing. It looked as if mostly it had been cleared by fire, but in a perfect circle. No sign of a fire pit or a singular place where a fire would have been built. No, it was more like a whole 50-foot circle was the fire pit, and all the ground and the trees were the kindling. At first, I thought maybe this was a place where where one of the arsonists originally set the fire, but it was clear now that we were closer that it was an old burning, probably from lightning. So we made camp just like that. After all, it was the largest island we had came across thus far, and we really had nowhere else to go that was dry, so it seemed a smart and safe bet. The captain said, "Looks like the arson is moving around," pointing to the fires in the distance and the different spots that the clouds were rising. The gray clouds were rising into the sky from the fires, billowing smoke. Arson's been busy. If that's an arson ahead of us, I'll be willing to bet this fire didn't burn out. If you like before, be willing to bet it burnt out before spreading. It was likely enough, I guess, so we decided to make camp on the island in the center. I still didn't feel right about it. We proposed a night watch. The captain agreed, saying that, "Eyes open, boys. We don't want to be caught off guard tonight, or any night, really." We hadn't set a guard previously, and none said why we were this night, but as I said, we were all on edge. We already know someone is out there lighting the fires. So stay frosty and split up into 3-hour shifts. He clearly didn't plan on doing a shift himself tonight. Sleep came fast, for I hiked 2 miles, hacking my way through every inch of it for the line, and every inch was hard work and hard going. So I fell asleep easy. Needless to say, I was hard to wake when it came to my shift. I didn't really think I was I really didn't think a single arson walk into a camp full of muscle-bound trench dogs looking for trouble. You know, after all, that's the reason they light fires in the woods and run away. Stay out of people's eyes. It's because they're scared and weak little pussies that feel big about killing innocents, whether it's animals or the people before their fires. But I took my shift seriously, and I drank my cup of instant cold coffee, and Sergeant made it markedly more palatable by giving me a sugar packet. About an hour into my watch, I heard a sloshing and splashing in the water not so far from the camp. Shining my light out over the water, I saw hundreds of eyes of alligators. Every size and shape could be seen as far as the light illuminated. It was a vast surprise to me to see the very multitude and size and shape. Never in the night have we seen this many gators. As my shift ended, I did a circuit of the island, and to my shock, I found a deer carcass on the half that was left. Appeared to be half eaten, lying among the cypress stumps along the edge of the water. I just took it for granted that it was some leftover gator bait and kept walking my route. Probably got suffocated in the fires, and they just drug them in. I was very distressed over this discovery, and I threw half of the half of the deer back into the water, hoping that the gators would make a short work of the rest of it. Mostly, I just didn't want the carcass drawing larger predators onto the island where we were. I was all right in that fear. It proved all too great. I set the last man to his watch, but silence wouldn't hold till his watch was up. About an hour after going back to sleep, I was awakened by the blood-curdling scream of a man in mortal pain. Me and the rest of the team came alive, jumping and grabbing our gear, weapons, and heading to find the source of the scream, all turning on our flashlights and spotlights. We all went to the source of the gurgling and the shouting. And at this point, we were following the sounds. We headed to the water's edge. The noise had ceased completely. By this point, we looked for a sign, and for John, for who relieved me on watch. And after searching on the shore of the island, we saw no sign of him. We lit out our torches upon the water and scanned, fearing that a gator had drug him in. As before, we saw eyes. That wasn't the peculiar thing. The most unsettling thing is that there was only one set. The eyes were set wide, so wide, wider than any gator we had seen this whole time. I had seen in 3 days hike through the swamp. We were without a hope and deep within a swamp, a veritable Georgia jungle, without any way out but the 3 days hike back. Upon seeing the eyes, I immediately thought of the deer in the tree. If it can take a full-grown deer, it certainly could take a man. Even before seeing what it was, I backed away toward the path that we came into the clearing. I heard the men shout, "Run," and they made it into the camp in the clearing. That was when the huge green slit of a nose covered with green moss rose up into the clearing, revealing what looked to be an immense dragon or serpent with wings, a gator of such size. He roared and stood upon his legs and spread those long front appendages. They filled the clearing. And all at once, he filled the clearing with his flame, making it almost a perfect circle of fire, just touching the rim of the trees. It dawned on me then that he had done this more than once. This was his den, and we have came into his domain. It was a trap. I thought it was, as if I saw the flame reach out towards me. I hesitated just long enough to confirm that all my friends were well and dead. And beyond the point of death even, they were crisp to hardly any remains. They died instantly and probably felt no pain, so I took that consolation and dove into the swamp, heading out over tall and long nights and days, never hauling my way all the way out the forest, never to speak of it until now. I quit the woodland firefighting, trench dogs, upon coming home, and that was pretty much that. But believe me when I say that those 9 men died, and whatever it was, still in the swamps of Georgia.